I first discovered Ron's work in this little pamphlet right here, which is included in the dust jacket of McSweeney's 13. Ron had been practicing as a mini comics creator since the early 90s. Before that, he's had books with Fantagraphics, Drawn Quarterly, other work in McSweeney's and in the New York Times, and has a new book that I do not have, called Shell Collection, which is upstairs at the table. And I actually brought two of his previous books, which you may recognize. One is called The Cartoon Utopia, and this one called Halcyon. It came out a couple of years ago, also available downstairs. Ron's also brought some super fun ephemera and other mini comics that he works on. The Shell Collection is a collection of the last 8 years of a monthly zine that he sends out through his to Patreon subscribers. So you can get more information about that upstairs as well. If you like to get mail as much as I do, it's a really great way to get it. He's very consistent. So who's got a question for Ron?
So my question is about Patreon as a platform. How did you end up there, find an audience, and
A lot of other people were using it. I don't like it. I don't think it's good for visual art, really. It seems to be good for video and podcasting. At the time, everyone was doing it. Was the first crowd-funded sort of thing I tried to do, and I didn't really start looking for people because I already been doing comics for a long time. By the time I started it, I also PayPal has all these different subscription buttons, different kinds that you can use, and I just have a really basic one, but I think it's better to build your own website, start your own subscription thing, and unless you're trying to get stuff from some community that's there on Patreon or something like that. I wouldn't know if in certain subject matters there might be a reason to be there, but yeah, I just use it because it's the easiest thing to use. I actually I post the comics that I do every month on there, and I wasn't sure if anyone was ever looking at them, because they get the stuff in the mail. And I wrote on there this month, I was like, does anyone even look at this? Does it matter? And I would save myself a little time every month, and then 3 people wrote. And they're like, no, I want to read it online. So
It's probably online where they get it.
Yeah,
they email it out, and so yeah.
Yeah, so they can see it, or they're looking at other stuff that way. But yeah, it doesn't, it's very, I've tried to follow other cartoonists and stuff, and it's hard to read comics on it. It doesn't seem to work, and it seems like it's the whole reason that they exist, and it's weird that it's kind of difficult. That was my review of them.
Yeah, I actually have found that the Patreon, the way the content is delivered on it, it's either it's a blog, essentially, that's how you use it. But the ways in which I find it most rewarding to use it are actually the other ways, like what you're talking about.
Oh, really?
With you or with CF, receiving something.
Yeah.
Being on a list is
Yeah.
But there are, you're right, it's not a great way to absorb comics, but I wonder, is there something you would want to, would you want to say anything on there that you're not already saying in the comic?
No, not really. No, it's just a way to get people's addresses and to charge people.
Totally.
Which, it's great it exists.
Other questions?
Sure.
How do you get a comic in the New York Times?
That's really funny because I did illustrations for them pretty much my entire career. People asked me to do things, and so I never got to answer questions like that. It's just eventually I have to do what I do and do the comics, and so I got a very clear line style, and I went to illustration school for it, and that's a thing that you would develop without using any color or grays or anything. Almost specifically for the New York Times, because they used to not even have grayscale in their illustrations, but they did not have comics at all. No sequential panels in the New York Times. It was strictly forbidden for 200 years, or whatever, 150 years, however long it was. And now there's comics in there all the time, but there are everywhere, but I did do the first one. And I had to look it up recently, and I'm like, have I been writing about that for so long? I'm like, no, I did. There was a magazine. The New York Times magazine once, and that was a really hard job. They didn't know what to do. they didn't know, they had to fact check and edit on my writing. Because it was New York Times, it was very serious. It was before the internet, like they were the stuff to get the writing from me and then to send it to print. And I had like, it was dial-up internet. Like they were like, you have to change these words, you spelled this wrong with this, and I couldn't fit the stuff in the panels. But yeah, they just called me. I used to have, the last day job, I quit my last day job like 20 years ago.
What was it?
I worked at Ticket Web, and we were a subsidiary of like Ticketmaster. They were selling tickets on the internet for the first time.
That's
Around like the turn of the century.
slap up.
But it was very, I was able to use my cubicle job as a place to do work for the New York Times. I wouldn't have been able to do it because you needed a fax machine. And you needed to, I don't know if it's still true, but like you had to, they would call it and they needed it in like 3 hours. And you had to like fax it to them or like you had their FedEx number or something. But it was very, yeah, it was very, so I was able to use that job until we like, and I was like, I don't know if I could have done it if I was just at home. Have an office job is probably a great way to continue with that.
You had another question?
I have questions about like distribution, like print distribution. I've never done that before, and like if you had an introductory guide to like printing your artwork, because I'm primarily digital.
Right. It's funny, me and my friends did this zine, I don't know when it was, in the very early 2000s, and I did Xeroxing. And another friend of mine did silk screening, and then my third friend did like desktop design. So it was still for to make your printed stuff, but that zine is a PDF that's out there that like gets around and people still use it. A lot of my stuff is mostly outdated because they don't. A Xerox machine now is a scanner attached to a laser printer. Like it isn't, the stuff I'm telling you to do isn't quite the same kind of stuff. I don't even know what device I have. Really. But that's just like printing stuff out. Distribution, you just have to use the internet to get people, you know. As opposed, I did stuff really locally. When I was a young person, I was in Boston, and I just had like a little shelf in the record store or in the comic book store and stuff like that. The old-fashioned way.
Yeah, self-publishing production, I guess, is one side of that. You have a book, the hardcover that you put out.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Did you use like a?
I used the same printer as Fantagraphics in China. No, in Korea.
They just give the keys away to that?
My friend Sammy Harkin had done something through them, and he had kind of worked out. He's like, Ron, let's do this next book with the same system that I set up. I don't know if, yeah, so I had to self-publish that book.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, self-publishing is really important to me. This little reason I started doing everything, and I continue doing it because it's so empowering, you know, just to have no, like, gatekeepers on anything you do. It's been, like, super, and I also feel like kind of, it's important to me not just in a way of, like, me doing stuff, but it's part of, like, a lineage of, like, pamphlet makers or people like mail art or, like, hand distributing stuff, you know. I didn't realize this till, like, later in life, but so many of the, like, enormous changes that have happened in the world, politically or religiously, happen through tiny little pamphlets. You know, that's how they could get the word out to people and stuff like that. And I try and see myself as kind of like continuum. That's why I still do it, you know. And I don't like computers. I don't like it for my work. I need to spend so much time, I need to have a physical object. And that's the main thing with drawing. I try to move around with drawing, but you know, like there's like this thing between me and younger people where like everything they've ever drawn is digital and it doesn't exist, which would drive me nuts. Like I need my closet full of paper to feel like I've done stuff, you know. And of course I have a hard drive that everything is on, but
Ron has a book upstairs that looks like a kick-ass Fantagraphics book that he self-published, so you can also go check that out. Interesting. Right here.
So where do you keep all of your physical comic pages, and how do you preserve them?
in my crummy little apartment in a closet. I don't know, I guess they're just in plastic bags. which is like not the best thing that I would like throw. I'm like, so what I would do is I would throw my life's work out the window. I would have to come out of the closet into the bedroom. Have a few. I mean, I don't know why if other people think this way, but that's.
The way you talked about the plan was a huge clue to how potentially could potentially fail.
Yeah, exactly. No, it does involve throwing my life's work into I live on the second floor. And if there's any weather, it would get wet. But I bet, that's the disaster plan.
It's all part of the art.
And I don't know if I paid to have a storage container somewhere, if it would be better,
You need an archivist.
When you make comics though, you make a lot of stuff. And we have more physical stuff than a lot of, I guess other artists work larger and stuff like that, but it just always piles up. Because there's so much of it.
I think that problem does not go away if you work digitally either. I was speaking to Maddie last night who said that she lost a hard drive.
Yeah, no, I have those.
It's like,
Drop a computer.
or you don't even have, sometimes you're like, well, I've got 10 of them now.
But that's an age divide between people's comfort with digital stuff like that, and musicians are the same way, or photographers.
Yeah.
You can also find anything every day quick.
So obviously you've had a lot of experience in self-publishing, but you've also worked with companies like Fantagraphics, and you mentioned how you even, found out who their printer was and went to Asia. And so just curious, what are some of the pros and cons of, publishing your own thing versus, taking your project to a company like Fantagraphics?
The pros are obviously distribution, getting your name out there, having a publisher, that has an office, all of that kind of stuff. Especially now with graphic novels and regular bookstores, there's all of that side is really the pro side of it. You don't make a lot of money with comics and doing other books, and if you really want to, and if you work with a publisher, you're getting a percentage of something. And it is a very analogous to music in that way, that if you want to take control of it, if you want to just, make more or decide what it is or get on it, you have to do it yourself.
Right.
Which is true in most medias. So there's sort of that pro and con. Unless you have, I don't have an enormous, I don't make my work to appeal to other people, or have, you have a big hit, you have a character, you want to do something. Those are obviously the reasons to go and do that, but yeah, I'm very thankful to be published. I'm published by the publishers I read when I was a teenager. It's just astounding to me. And even get, I don't know if I would come to things like this if I didn't have published books and stuff.
So when you are self-publishing, and you have to create a lot of work, what pace do you work at, and how do you, keep yourself on track to finish something?
Different at different points in my career and stuff like that. Because as a cartoonist, I'm just kind of doing stuff all the time. But making a graphic novel is a huge, especially if you're going to be working on a project, it's a huge thing to plan in advance. And usually I just like to get my rent paid for a bunch of months. I'll usually just do work and be just get ahead on things and then be I have these 4 months or 6 months, whoever it is, to work on something. But I'm very dedicated. It's part of my life to kind of just work all the time. But you do have to schedule it, because unless you don't want to finish your project, and it's all, a lot of people don't finish things or to find that pacing. Everyone's different, but yeah, I kind of have to plan it out in advance, carve it a place.
How does it work getting traditionally published in cartoon and comics, graphic novels specifically? I mean, you can't have a finished product and then present it. Do you have a proposal? You say you're
Right, it's so different between different parts of the industry and different people you work with. Yeah, it is hard to make a proposal to someone. I don't know if there is a standard, but then graphic novels, just the whole kind of mainstream, because they're on the way to making movies or TV, pretty much any kind of mainstream media you might make a graphic novel first now, and I don't know the rules with those kinds of people or anything. With me, with my publisher, publishers, yeah, it's usually like they go on faith a lot of the time, based on other work that you've done and stuff like that. Or maybe you have a section of it finished, or something. I think it's different for different people, but I think the publishers I work with, they just know, based on your
Because of reputation as a finisher, like a guy who's gonna like.
yeah, someone who's gonna actually do something
Yeah.
or something like that. But I think the publishers I work with, it's more like artist-based kind of stuff. But you know, you can get a master's in making comic books now, so I don't know what they teach about how you propose it. Like, I think there's all these standards I don't know anything about.
There's an MFA for comics and parts of it.
Yeah, there's all kinds of college courses for making comic books, which to someone like me is kind of crazy. But
That's how I feel about it.
yeah. But yeah, so I don't know. It's very interesting to me when I meet people that have taken the courses or even hear about it, or a lot of like, I just loved comics and made everything up. So to this day, there'll be funny conventions of how you letter things, or how you're supposed to put them. I don't think there's a lettering guide. It's a little piece of plastic that you make the lines with, and you draw the lines up so you can fit all the letters in. It's just like an old school drafting thing that everyone uses. Like, I've never used one of those. And then there's other things about how big you make the bowl that people talk about. I'm like, oh, I never thought of that. So there's lots of different conventions and stuff. But
My assumption, we're in an institution where I think some of those things are
Things are-
flawed,
yeah.
and maybe even there's.
I find it hard to make a proposal, just on the basis of your question. It's very kind of hard. Like my very first book, I made a script and spent 5 years finishing the script, and no one told me to do that. And I drew the grid of each page and wrote what was going to happen in each panel, which is what a lot of people do. But like not everyone does that, do it that way. But I remember, and I gave it to my friend Tom, who's just a friend of mine who published the book. He was like,
Where is that object now?
I think there's 3 of them. I have them. Yeah. Actually, I printed ones because I was pitching it. I think that's the first and only time that I really did.
There's no drawings in it, it's a just.
There's no writing. It's just words.
Oh.
Yeah. It looks really weird way of doing things, but a lot of people do that these days. It's because like writers make graphic novels now and stuff like that. You just say because the book is mostly wordless actually that I was doing. So it mostly just said what was in each panel with the pages and
It
stuff.
sounds a little like children's publishing for very young readers. They always want the text first, then they
Find the artist to go with it. Yeah, just that, but really complicated, I guess. Yeah.
And so one way to answer the question of like what is flawed in a program like that would be to say, perhaps they hire someone like you and you show up like any other MFA instructor and go, this is the way I do this, and you can
Maybe you should
learn these rules so you can break them, you know?
But there is so much of the industry that is related to storyboarding or that kind of stuff that I don't know a lot about.
Here you go. Yes.
So you talk about breaking up and like your planning process. How do you break things up? What sequential order do you work in? Do you work at like one chunk at a time, like finish?
Yeah, I usually do like a chapter
Uh-huh.
at a time or something like that. Different, you have to draw and then you have to ink it. Some people like do in between parts. I'll usually do really rough sketches of a chapter or so. I like to do like 10 or 15 pages and then ink it before I go to the next part, but there's certainly no standard for that or anything. But
So you kind of like batch work. How far ahead do you like write normally? Full thing?
my whole career is 20 years. My next book is going to be something that I wanted to do in the 90s that I didn't get to yet. My last book, the Halcyon book, interrupted me because it came into my head. A lot of my stuff, I don't know how to say it, that's like a lot of spiritual stuff in my work, but I don't argue with what comes into my head. I just let it flow through me. So sometimes things will just come into my head and have to be done and stuff, but a lot of the books I do, I know that I want to do. I want to do like an adaptation of a short story someone wrote. I've wanted to do that for at least a decade, and I want it to be painted as opposed to colored with a computer. It'll take me 20 years to do, but I will do it eventually. So I plan this stuff very, very far in advance. I have like all And I've told people this because I have a whole like painting career and I have a whole sculpture career, and there's like, the architecture, I have just like too many ideas of things to do. I do multiple lifetimes, but I think I'd like to spend the later part of my life like doing fine art kind of stuff. I don't know what or how, besides saying that I'm going to quit.
If you
I want to do it like kind of the Cat and Beefheart way,
if you announce it, then you hold yourself accountable.
Yeah.
You're accountable to everyone you say it to.
This musician Cat and Beefheart was kind of at the height of what he was doing. It was just like, I quit being a musician, I do paintings now. And he did, and they're good. I've always found that inspirational to just be able to let go, do the thing.
You had a show a couple of years ago.
Of paintings?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that the only one you've done?
No, I've done a lot of art shows, but it's usually compiled with like stuff I've already made.
Got it.
Like
Or
comics
show,
pages,
cobble together like this.
yeah, and if there's paintings, it's personal work and stuff, but that's the only thing that I've done like planned in advance as a show.
Right.
With like, I'm going to make these paintings and put them in this space. I made a little cut out of the gallery, the measurements to see where they would go. That's the only time I've ever done it, which is that. Yeah.
So you're someone obviously with a really distinct style. What does style mean to you? Is it like a dogma? Is it something like a set of rules that you abide by, or is it something that has changed over time?
That's
Or
a
that
very
you see a
interesting
direction,
question.
sort of a vector for your style, or because I always find myself, falling back on, is it something that I just naturally do, or is it
Right,
something,
or is it something
a set
I got
of
from-
rules? Right.
Yeah, or I guess I kind of have a set of rules for myself. A lot of people talk about style, like, is your style from somewhere else? Is it a little like doing other people's things, like that kind of stuff. I don't know, I guess I kind of just draw the way I do it. I do have like some cartooning rules that I don't know, I don't put spaces between the panels. I don't use grayscale or sort of like the way the faces look. I think it's just like with time, like finding your own cartooning thing. I've been doing it so long, but I think early on I developed my style because I did go to art school, and when I was a young person, like I'm not technically good at like painting or like drawing people realistically or like that kind of stuff. Like that, I can do it. Doesn't look that special or anything like that. And I almost kind of quit making visual art. I thought I wanted to make music videos or like something like that. But then I realized that I could just do what I wanted to do and hone in on like the way I did it. Kind of like gave me. I could have very easily thought my stuff wasn't good enough. I couldn't draw things correctly and quit because of that sort of like frustration you have. But I just kind of like found the part the way I wanted to do it, honed in on it, and it became very individual style as opposed to like other people's. And I guess I do have rules because like the whole thing with like I don't use grayscale or shading or any of that. Like I could have stopped at any point or something like that, but it just became part of what I do.
I actually have a note in my list of eject letter questions that I did want to ask you. I think in one of your books, and I can't recall which one it was, probably Cartoon Utopia. There is a page where there are like, amongst all the line art in the whole book, there's like some filled in stars. And one of the things that I always have responded really positively to in your work is how much dimension you get out of a line with no real like black fills or shading. And was even once told by another artist that I needed to apply that, or else like no one could tell what was happening in the work.
Right.
And you get a lot of depth out of those lines without even, and a lot of artists are like, oh, I do line art. Well, they do their shading with like a one-way hash, and it's like that's still shading.
Yeah.
How do you? First of all, what made you fill those stars in? How did you decide that? If you don't know what I'm talking about, we can...
It's like throughout the series of the story, it's in a certain panel.
Yeah.
It does have a reason in the
story,
but mostly it was graphical.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I wanted it. I was like, this will look really cool if I fill in this. And then over those pages, it hasn't pointed in the story. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was mostly just like design.
narrative
Choice,
element, yeah. And then question two is like, are you ever tempted to just go like
washes, I know it's just you couldn't Xerox. The ways that I did my styles, because you couldn't Xerox any grays with a analog Xerox board.
Sure.
It came out black or white with no gray.
Right.
Or if it was inconsistent. And so much of my early career was about taking a copy and making a copy of a copy. Having made readies. There was a lot of punk stuff with stealing photocopies. It was like this whole underground thing of people being like, go to this place and go so you can have your stuff ready. So I go into that one library and be like, you know. So I couldn't use gray for that stuff. And at this point, yeah, I wouldn't want to try it. But things soon came.
Ron confessed to me that he hated coloring this book, and if you look at it, you can't tell. It's awesome. It looks like someone who loved it, loved doing it, did it. So if you get a chance, you can see what it looks like when Ron applies other elements to his.
That's another thing about graphics in that book, is that he did not care at all if it was in color or not.
That's,
That they don't. I was like, but I'd like to have a book, maybe if I color it, it seems stupid to do something in black and white in the 2020s. It doesn't cost anymore, you guys don't care, but it's a bunch of work, should I do it? I'll sell more, but everybody's like, one of your stuff, it doesn't sell well, but it sells. You're low, you're an artist who doesn't, he's like, unless you do something spectacular that's different, he's like, which I don't really even think you can do now. Your stuff, people just buy your stuff now. He's like, it doesn't make any difference to us if it's in color. And I was like, that's not even what you mean. I was like, that's not what you're supposed to tell me. He's like, so it's up to you, we could either publish it now, or you can go back later with the color. Which is like a weird thing to just being like, doesn't. So I had a hard time knowing whether color has
to spend.
and I did it that book was done in Xerox form first. So it does exist in black and white, and I did it as a black and white book. And I think the Xerox has kind of looked more interesting to me, but I'm glad I colored it. It looks great again and everything. But it's so funny to have a choice to kind of realize that it doesn't matter.
And you had to elect to spend all that time, and did that change your deal with them at all? Or they were just like...
No, it didn't matter to them. It was just like a question of scheduling, when it would happen and stuff like that. But I'm glad I did it. It was that I wanted that project to look that way. So.
For sure. It shows.
So, not necessarily art fundamentals, but are there any fundamental skills that you'd recommend for creative people that have really helped you in your life and throughout your career?
It's interesting. I would be curious, I think, about stuff, because so much of my creativity can be playing over just about finding out as much stuff and seeing as much art as possible or something like that. Look at as much stuff. It's a good idea to try as many different things. It's a later career thing I've noticed as an artist, making art that I don't care about in mediums I don't know if I'm good at, just to try them, and to not even necessarily, I did some psychedelic painting, abstract painting stuff a few years ago, and I don't show it there. It wasn't for that, but it was just do as many different things as possible.
Just see if it's going to click in a place for you.
Yeah. But I mean the opposite is true too, is when you know what you want, comics or something, if you know you want to do it, you're just but.
I will ask infinite questions if you let me.
I got some too, we can start.
Okay.
So, going into that, have you ever had to do art that you weren't passionate about? And if you have, do you have strategies for coping with that?
Not that much, no.
No?
No, I guess I did have a little bit of an illustration career for a while, but I don't remember getting that many jobs I didn't like, or I don't know. I guess there are some things that I'm not excited about that don't come out so great, but yeah, no, I don't think I ever have. I think I would, but I've never really turned anything down either, so I don't know. Yeah, I think there's probably strategies to do, but I haven't had to do it.
I'm going to thread that to his question about the New York Times and ask, let's
it's still true, but it's a separate design team than the rest of the newspaper, because they need stuff right away. And they're just like, it's like Nelson Mandela wrote something, and we have to put it out. And we had to find the appropriate artist to do it, and that job, it cycles through. People are usually there about a year. I think it's a very prestigious design job to get that. But it was someone who worked related to comics. It was my friend Dan Nadell put out this thing called the Gansfeld, and it was his partner, like the partner that he published the book with, had that job and called me. But I think that was part of the first thing. Like, I can't believe this is happening. But
Dan from Picture Box.
yeah, Dan from Picture Box with Peter Buchanan Smith is the person that he's doing stuff with. And he was there. So he knew my work through comics, yeah. I knew that it would work for him and called me.
This is kind of a two-part question, and forgive my ignorance here. How much have you worked in animation?
Not at all.
Not at all.
No, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't. It took me a really long time to articulate it. Pictures do not move, and they definitely don't make any sense.
Have you had people try to do it?
No, I would love to. If someone took my characters and wanted to make something of what I've done, or something, or wanted to like. I think that animation is changing a lot really quickly, where I could make drawings and people could make a project and make things move without me doing that much. I always figured someone would approach me about doing stuff or being involved in making the backgrounds. I tried a little bit to get jobs in the industry, but it was just too hard for me. And it comes back to that skill set that I just brought up on Regé. And so the idea of me like storyboarding or working on like my friend's shows is I did a little bit of like trying to learn the tech stuff, and it just didn't really work out. It seems like a thing where like I'd have to have a show that was designed by me as opposed to working for other people. And I do see, I'm in LA seeing art center and college students and their drawing skills and what they can do in working in the industry. And I'm kind of blown away by it. Yeah, but yeah, it takes a lot of chops. Yeah, I know. I've never, it's never been something I've changed. I don't have like ideas that fit into it so much. But as far as doing like art, animation, or something like that, I think that like if I was going to do animation, I probably wouldn't look like my work. I would do it like photography or like something very artistic. Have you been involved in stuff? This is Bill, who I did 2 book covers for. And I don't know when you were here down, we should just have a panel with the two. And we've never met before, so it's very.
How did that? Bill, who's sitting here, is a author that Mixed Wings has published a couple of years ago, and then you've got 2 others. How did that?
That was probably my only classic job like that. Where it was like you're going to do the cover of this novel, and here it is, to read something in a way, yeah, but we were separated too. I know that that's traditionally how books are made, like novels. They get someone different to do the cover. I'm from such a world of people working on stuff together that was unusual to me.
And you have to read the books, and I'm really sorry.
I enjoy reading, and you know what? I don't read novels very often. I'm not a big novel reader, so they're great. And I don't want to reread them. I remember them getting crazier as they went on.
Yeah.
I very much appreciated it.
Well, I was curious.
So they put the 2 of us together. That was the only job.
And you guys had never spoken or met
No.
until today. Have you spoken before?
I feel like we emailed.
Yeah. But that's me for everyone. I'm just really old. I don't know anyone except for you.
But it was great when they asked me to do the second book. I wasn't expecting that to happen, and I was like, oh, this is such a cool thing. The pairing kind of thing to do something by someone else's work. I thought that was cool.
I was wondering, if you don't have interest in animation so much, but I wondered if the movie industry had ever approached you to animate the work, or to use your images in a film, or say, we like your work, we want to make it move.
No, it hasn't happened yet. Although I shows that look like I drew them. You know, and it is me. I'm the guy that the shows look like. And I have to answer to a lot where people just look and just be like, oh, you're not even that. That's interesting. Yeah. And I am like one of the only guys that like didn't work on that, but a lot of people did it and stuff like that. It looks like me and 5 other people. It's a lot of animation today that looks like early 90s, like indie comics kind of stuff. But yeah, no, people have their own ideas. I think mostly with that kind of stuff. You know, I don't know if. Yeah, I can't imagine them taking my drawings and doing it. Although the animation has gotten crazy. The way even like the mainstream Marvel movies that put in really weird comic styles in their films and stuff like that. So like who knows? I'll probably just have some horrible AI thing happen. God only knows what we're going to see in the next few years. But it'll be terrible at first. And then when they perfect it, it'll be even.
That was a good question. It's not hard for me to imagine you deciding to work in a different medium but approaching it in a completely different way. It's also not hard for me to imagine any of your books being animated in some way. Are you?
Halcyon Advent's one reason to
It
color it.
looks like.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Or have you ever had an agent or like a rep or a manager?
I never have had any of that stuff. I wouldn't mind it. I feel like I was maybe my illustration career was very at the tail end of physical stuff that I didn't like concentrate on it as much. I don't know if I need one for comics and stuff. I thought having an illustration one, but yeah, it's never really clicked or made sense. I'm not against that. But yeah, it's never really made sense with things.
You have a question? No? Okay.
Yeah, just why comics? Like, who's the artist or the book that, got you addicted?
We're a weird bunch, and it's my whole life. I was born a cartoonist.
Yeah.
And I'm not, like, the only one who's like that. It's a very interesting medium and career. We're so lucky. I've been all over the world. I've been to Siberia and done a thing in a room like this. And I meet the other cartoonists. I'm like, hello, brother cartoonist, sister cartoonist. And like, we get in. There's nothing else. I don't think there's another visual medium that's like it. But it's a vernacular American form. Art form is also like the basis of like all art. It's like everything. Any two pictures that relate to each other are cartoon. It's very just like it's a weird, interesting club to join. But I felt it very early on. I was like 5 years old, and I told everyone that's what I was going to do. I just knew exactly what I was going to do. It was going to be comics, and I was going to and then I became like a weird, punky artist kind of guy. And I'm like, well, this doesn't even make sense for comics, but it's just what I always wanted to do. So I'm going to do it. The idea of being like a David Lynch kind of abstract film version, like cartoon, is a very weird thing to do because the medium is so great, used in specific ways. But during my lifetime, it's all just blown apart. And it didn't be done that with other stuff. But yeah, I never aspired to do like a daily newspaper cartoon or anything like that. I was going to be something separate, but that's probably where it came from next. I don't even know what my first favorite comic strip was.
Do you remember the first time you sat down to make a bed? Like, did you have to decide, oh, I remember this thing I always said I wanted to be, I'm going to sit down and really like
the first comic that I did?
Yeah.
I did some embarrassing superhero stuff when I was in high school.
Ooh.
And it really is all gone.
Oh, no.
That's it. All
Threw it out the window already.
Yeah. Maybe tiny little pieces people can see or something like that. I had a splatter. I was into I don't know how to say synthetics. Synthetics, yeah. Man, I was really into him when I was like a really young teenager. So I had like a really bad rip off of his style that I tried for a little while. So I think I did some Xeroxing of those stuff, and I actually met the Ninja Turtle guys.
Eastman.
before they were, East Maryland was before they were famous. It was when the comics were first becoming popular. And so I went to the local comic book store and asked them everything I could. And they were self-publishing.
Yeah.
And so I asked them how to self-publish, and they told me, and I went and started making Xerox.
What were they on, like issue 4 or something? Or what is it?
Maybe issue 3 or 4. Yeah, of doing that. So that really was like the first, how it started. Yeah, Laird was the one who, I'm like, I wrote an email, I'm like, I'm not writing an email, I wrote him a letter in the mail. He wrote back to me. He drew my character, and I asked him if I could put it in my Xerox scene. And he wrote a very nice letter explaining copyright to me. It was really cool. It was like 14 or something like that. And he was like, although he was like, I was like, it's my character, but you drew it. Well, I have to ask you to put it in the thing. He was like, I was like, plus I own the artwork, right? It's mine. You drew it for me. He's like, oh,
Yeah,
it's
all
very
right.
nice of you to ask me. Yes, of course, you can use it. I drew it, so therefore I have to give approval for it. It was very, I hadn't thought of that in a really long time, but I think that was, the very first thing.
That's an awesome thing. Let back. You answered my question already, which was going to be, did you feel like you had to have a character? Because that one came up.
Oh, right, yeah, I guess at that time I did.
Well,
Because I wanted to have a super, oh my god. My superhero was called Squirrel. He was a man with hairy feet who could jump really high, he had a squirrel tail. And it was really cool, like Max Head from mid-80s flat.
Is it like Sienkiewicz style squirrel?
Yes.
That sounds cool. I mean,
Yeah,
you're making
very
me want to read this.
I've got $500 for a layer drawing of a squirrel.
It might be at my parents' house sometime.
That's really cool.
I know it's got a Donatello from the back, so I don't know how much those go for. Is that the right one? The one with the stick?
This is, the photo staff,
Yeah.
Oh my god, is that? I just did a comic with a character with one of those. I guess that's where I got it from.
As long as it doesn't have a purple mask on your stage.
Oh, there, colors, that's right. I was really into that comic, and talk about this, I have never seen a moving image of those. I have never seen those movies. I don't know how many there are, I don't know what years they were. I've only seen the black and white comic books because I was so dedicated to them. In the way that they became, it's something that happened in my lifetime that still makes no sense to me. I've never, and I realized with the new one, because the new one was good, and I know some kids who worked on it, and modern animation is almost interesting to me. It's probably good. I realized, I was like, I've never seen it. I've never seen that one from the 90s with the guys inside the suits. It's never been a choice of flipping through things that I've stopped on. And I've never been against it, it's just, it's never been a night where that's what I wanted to watch.
So if you've known you wanted to be a comic artist your whole life, what did your family and parents think of?
I was lucky they were very supportive.
Oh.
in that way of me being into art or wanting to go to art school.
Did they understand?
I think it was just, yeah, they did, and I think it was just because I was passionate about something. I think it was what mattered to them, as opposed to just working a job. Whether you liked it or not, or just just do it. I think it was just the fact that I was inspired was good. Being here and having, I went to Catholic school, and the nuns were very encouraging. It was all nuns, and just they were like, they were all intellectuals. They all just wanted to read books and not deal with men or talk to people. And they were all just teaching elementary school, but they had, I think that they could see that and support. I think they could see something in me and supported that. So I think,
I can tell.
I would have been very super lucky that, the nuns gave me a corner of the artwork. I had my own private drawing table and stuff. That's very cute.
Your work feels very supportive and not.
Yeah, it was only when I went to art school that people started telling me not to do shit. It was so stupid, it was so weird to me. I couldn't find any people in art school that didn't need taste. I couldn't find anyone who knew what he could read. It was so weird at the time. It was like the end of the 80s. I had been going to hardcore shows for like 4 years. People punching each other in the face, people bleeding, and I just finally go to art school and people I'm like, I couldn't find like anyone who had ever heard of like Tom Waits or like anything. It was so boring. I couldn't figure it out. They're all like competing with each other. I want to be the best at what I do. What are you talking about? They didn't want me to draw comics. They didn't want me to do like anything that I was doing. And like, I just remember being in illustration class and they're like, well, this is kind of cutesy. And are you going to pursue children's illustration? And I was like, no, I'm going to make weird comic books. They're like, that doesn't make sense. And I was like, I've got to go home and send some zines to Japan and Australia later today. I'm already doing it. I don't know how I got why.
I'm gonna make a book that looks like a kid's book that I literally have to put high on a shelf to keep away from the kids.
It wasn't a completely bad experience. I did enjoy kind of like being there with the facilities and it, but there was just, I don't know how to explain it, it doesn't seem like it's like that anymore. It was just like school was for the squarest people. And there were such square artists that I don't know if that just never met them yet. Probably because they all design cars and like gold houses and stuff. Like they probably were fine in their houses. But there was so much kind of like not like to bring your portfolio to the guy at the magazine office who's going to be really dismissive of you. There was so much hierarchy in the arts that just doesn't seem to be there as much. I see people designing stuff and they tend to be of the same age or interest and stuff. There's so much like gatekeeping that I just wasn't interested in doing.
I hope that's true, and I think that might be true because of people like you who are teaching who know how bad that
There's such an enormous divide at that time. I don't know what it was.
it definitely persists in some areas. I'm not sure about the art.
I had already been supported by my parents in nuns, so I didn't care.
Too late.
And it had already been, it had already just seemed like just crazy culture that was happening.
Oh, I forgot what you said. Oh, no, I feel kind of worried about your archive there.
You stressed him out.
So, sorry.
I'm excited to sit here. I love that. Should I send it to you?
No,
Get it right.
but like libraries, that's what they're for.
I know. I like the I don't think I'll ever have an archivist, but I've known a few people that have gone into that thing where that career. And I had a friend who worked with an older artist going through his house and his stuff and putting the labels and putting them on boxes and stuff like that. And everything. But he was sometimes very disheveled people have that treatment to stuff.
Yeah, Albert Moy said, don't throw anything away.
Yeah.
My
My entire career is in black and white and can fit in a very small hard drive, and I think doesn't cost that much a month to put it in the cloud. So I do have everything backed up that way, and there's not a huge difference between the paper drawings and the scans. So
I was wondering if that could everything up the back way.
Yeah.
But the other way.
yeah. It's funny as a career as a cartoonist. One thing when I made those giant paintings that I've never had like a studio or a place to keep things, and one of the reasons I've never made it as artist, I don't know what the hell to do with it. And I'm afraid to make sculpture. What people do with it?
I think
I don't know where they put them. You just have a permanent storage space built or something for your stuff. But yeah, that's always been kind of funny. But yeah, when I did those paintings, my friend was like, "Will you make these?" I was like, "You have to let me studio to make them. I can't. They're 9 feet tall. I can't fit them in my apartment."
Did you like that? Did it make you want to do more? Did you have a big space and you just go in?
Yeah, we rented it for like 2 months and I thought I was gonna like stay up all night and do all this extra stuff. I just had to work on the big. It was really hard to get and everything, but I love the idea of it. Yeah. No, I think in another life I would have had if I like had a garage or something where I had lived in tightly packed cities, or something like that. If I had lived in Austin or something, like that. I think maybe if I had more space, I had made different work or something like that. Yeah, I don't know what to do with my archive.
You just stressed out a guy who sells like 15th century alchemy books that he's buying.
occasion. I'd love to talk to you about old books sometimes over a bit. You know, the one time I was in Austin, and made me think of you. I did an art show at this place, Domi, like a decade ago or so.
Yeah.
But someone traded me a book for artwork there, and it was the only time is antiquarian books like a thing in Austin more, or I thought it was a weird coincidence. But it was a book. It was all of Tesla's writing in one volume from the 40, like a very old book of everything he had done, published in Serbia. You know, it was in English, but he was like, would you trade this for these 3 drawings? And I was like, he's like, I've heard that you like Nikola Tesla. I was like, I'm into Tesla. If you're not, look him up. Not the car. It's the opposite, almost literally. Because he's AC. And those parts are DC. You don't know, he had alternating current was made, he had a vision of swirling electricity above his head. It just came to him. I think it knocked him down on the ground when he had the vision of alternating current. And he had to rush home and didn't leave the house for like a year, writing it down because his vision was of the currents alternating. But Tesla's your DC, I guess. Because alternating current can't be controlled with soul, right? Or something. It's like they had to invent DC to sell electricity to people, I think. And Nikola Tesla invented something that we could all have for free, could never be controlled. They came out of the ground called electricity. And as far as I know, I've never had a scientist or anyone else. As far as I know, electricity is freely available everywhere if you just use what he said.
The New York Times.
But this entire field we work living won't let that happen. I believe that's true. It sounds like the craziest thing, but there's people with, there's a free energy tower somewhere in Texas I found on the internet, and it works, and it's free. It's heat. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
No one here can confirm.
Cannot challenge that.
Okay, hold on. When you say free electricity that comes out of the ground, are you talking about geothermal energy?
No, I think it's just grounding, just alternating current, I believe.
Alternating current that just magically comes out of the ground?
And is in the air and exists, yes, I believe it just exists and can be harnessed from everything that Tesla did, but when he died, the FBI entered his tiny little room in New York City and took everything, and no one's seen it since. I believe. But the free energy stuff was earlier in his life. But yeah, that's the biggest weird thing that I keep asking people. I'm like, is it fucking true? Then what the fuck is everyone doing? But I'm pretty sure it's true. Yeah, it has to do with just grounding to the earth. It's related. I don't understand it. But yeah.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
Look
at
Static
Static
electricity is not the same thing.
Yes.
It might be really.
I just remember that
Energy is
alternating
very-
current safer, and they used to put tram lines in, and the tram lines would be direct current, and then if you stepped on them, you would die because they had open
Yeah.
power everywhere. That's what I remember regarding Tesla versus Edison, the thing, but it's been so long since that history class about that.
Is there anyone's work that you envy right now?
Working artists? That's a good question. What is it?
Because any answer is funny.
Yeah, I know. There are a lot of that. I'm trying to think of someone specific. I definitely am impressed by people who are, able to produce really, just high quality work constantly. I'm trying to think of someone in the moment.
Oh, work ethic is a good way to.
Yeah, people with work ethic and stuff like that. Sometimes I'm impressed, by some people's work ethic, more necessarily work or anything like that.
Whose stuff do you look at? Are you
But in the present is hard. I guess I'm really, it's really asking
subscribe to anyone else's Patreon?
No.
It's a one-way street.
Yeah.
I have a friend in Canada, Sherry Boyle, who's I'm amazed by the amount of work that she makes, and she's a sculptor, and she makes sculptures, like life-size sculptures of people, and has had enormous kind of like museum gallery. She does comics and stuff like that. I'm kind of amazed by what she's achieved, but it is Canada. It's a little bit different than here or something like that.
We need to worry about, like a hospital.
Artists in Canada seem to be able to achieve more just in general, yeah, because of the support.
Cold when they stay inside.
No, because like there's an animation council, and if you're an animator, you're like on your taxes, you're an animator, or an illustrator, or a fine artist in Canada, and they have government support for like every medium that exists, and so it has most countries except for this one. I've gone back and forth with my attitude of being like, is it really great to have art supported, or is it more badass to be an American and just fucking fight through? Because I have gone to Europe and heard some ridiculous things about like just like how easy it is to like do things. It seems some like ridiculous complacency in things, and I'm like, that's why the blues come from. That's why you're all crazy for our shit. I learned you great German reggae, or have I? I have actually not really into hard rock and the Polish 70s stuff.
About 80% of the artists, of the Canadian comic artists that I thought were from Canada are Americans that live there.
Oh, really?
I think so, yeah. Like, the ones I can think of, I'm like, oh, that guy's Canadian. It's like, no, this is smart enough to do this.
Smart enough American? Yeah, I had to go south. I grew up in New England, and I wanted to be more cold.
So touch back on one thing you said. You're right. Earth batteries are a real thing. You didn't say like metal. You said what kind of metal? Zinc and copper into wet ground and put 2 connecting rods and get up to 5 volts apparently. You're not gonna be able to, like run a washing machine or a computer on that. You can power some lights apparently. There you go.
That's awesome. When he first asked you, I thought he was going to come out as a hard skeptic on the whole thing. That is a really great way to end our
Magic is real.